Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coach and Benway. It's a little bit of a newsy story this week. I am Dr. Benway. Coach Benway here has been not necessarily reading newspapers, but he's been flipping through the internet. What's compelling you these days?
Well, I'm sort of compelled by a couple of things that are sparking this very topical podcast because, like, as you listeners know, we usually talk about stuff in a much more macro level. But today we're actually recording it as we're posting it in the morning. Even though we have like a bunch of stuff today, we were supposed to show or run a podcast about Meryl Streep, but that got bumped because there's some shit going down that is just so goddamn interesting to me that I convinced Dr. Benway to do this episode. And the things that I'm interested in are twofold. Number one, or threefold. Number one, how the press is, crapping all over Donald Trump for something that he didn't say, which is he said that the Mexican gangsters, the MS-13 or something like that, that they are animals. And it was clear that he was referring to them. And yet the mainstream media is twisting around what he said quite obviously and deliberately and claiming that he's saying this about all immigrants from Mexico, which I find, it's really just laughable and despicable because it's really twisting the man's words around. There is simply no way that you can claim that he was saying this about all immigrants. He was answering a direct question. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the fact that the mainstream media is not saying a goddamn thing about the fact that it's coming out that Obama's Justice Department, Obama's FBI, seems to have had some sort of mole in the Trump campaign. And the very fact that the FBI right now is very nervous about that coming out and trying to keep it very quiet points to the fact that this is likely true. And the third thing I want to talk about is this woman, Meghan Markle, marrying Prince Harry. Now, this kind of royal trivia, I could have cared less, but the thing I find deeply troubling is this woman that he's marrying and the fact of their relative social position in Great Britain. They carry a lot of weight. And, Benway was the one that pointed out to me that she is a big old SJW. I myself find her just a trashy person, and I'm wondering, how on earth would any rational parent allow his son to marry such a trollop, because that's what she is. And so we're going to talk about these things and anything else that pops into our heads.
Keep in mind, though, what's interesting about that marriage is it's ironically completely reproducing the crisis in the 30s that led to Edward VIII's abdication.
You're absolutely right.
He was interested in marrying a woman who I think was older than him,
Yes.
and even if she wasn't, she was already divorced at least once, maybe multiple times.
Yeah.
And that, it was considered a moral affront that the king would, bring to his bed and with the crown upon her head, divorcee, to the point where the entire apparatus of British society, outside of a few people who were sympathetic to him, more or less forced him to abdicate within less than a year of his ascension to the throne. And now for the various, and you can go through 100 years or almost 100 years of, shall we say, a family in crisis, to put it mildly, to the point where now it's like, yeah, he can marry the troglodytic divorcee. What do we care?
No,
She's, she looks nice. She looks nice, and she's colorful, literally. So it's.
Well, okay.
The family has no moral courage.
Let's. Yeah, I don't get it. Look, let's go through the stats here. Okay. Now, this kid is a former army officer. Apparently he served with distinction in the front in Afghanistan, and he actually was in combat. He's 33 years old. He's a good-looking kid. It seems to be a pretty pleasant guy, pretty fun-loving, easygoing kind of kid. This woman is a 36-year-old, half white, half black, divorced actress. Okay. Now, the half black, half white, it doesn't really affect me, really. I don't care about that part. But all the other stuff, she's older than him. She's too old, frankly, to have kids, okay? The woman is an actress, okay? We'll get into that in just a second. But, when I got to Hollywood, one of the first warnings I was told is never, ever, ever date an actress because they're fucking nuts, all of them, without exception, okay? And that proved to be true. And this was back in the 90s, okay? So I can only imagine it's much worse now. She's an actress. She's divorced. I mean, she's a disaster. She's the absolutely worst woman I would want my son to marry. how on earth are his parents allowing this shit? I mean,
But
for a mistress, fine. I mean, yeah, but
part of
not
it is
for.
it is very obvious why they're allowing it because they have no say in it anymore.
Hmm.
They don't even have a say in the keepings of their own family. In part because they're the little pets
Hmm.
that the British keep around to say, "Hey, look at hey tourists, don't you like our palaces? Here's the with the strings. Here's the queen. Doesn't she look cool in her
Yeah.
crown?"
Yeah.
Does she is she really the sovereign of anything anymore? No, she
No.
can't even she can't even dissolve parliament,
No, she
which she
can't do
used to be
anything.
able to do a few years ago. She still had that power. She doesn't even have that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a publicity game, and I think it's funny. Even though Markle is quickly leaving the age to have children, keep in mind the thing that I'm kind of low key worried about, not big key, low key, is that there have been discussions, or I've heard for a long time that Charles and who's the elder William
Yeah.
have expressed anxiety about wanting to be king in their past lives. Maybe they'll be kings. I don't know.
Hmm.
But there's entirely possible that these guys with their anxiety and their hangups and whatnot will both say we can't deal with it. We can't bear the crown, and I can easily see some twisted situation where the Parliament want to say, hey, isn't a a multi-culty couple focused on SJW stuff? Isn't that kind of cool? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't they represent the new Britain? Because it doesn't matter where you were born or whether you're from the island. Everybody who lives here is British. I can believe a little scenario where they become the king and queen.
Actually, no. That would a lot of shit would have to happen because Harry right now is way down on the totem pole of succession. There's Charles. There's William. Then William's now 3 children. Okay, so the mass murderer would have to kill a lot of people for Harry to be king. Okay.
Well, no, it's actually he only has to worry about 2 people because the children of William are underage and they can turn around and say, "Oh, they have no position to say yes or no." So, William can decide for them. He only has to get 2 people
No,
out of
no,
the
no, no.
situation before he's
I don't think that that's a real
And you're
issue.
also and here's the thing though, you're pretending like the laws of succession mean anything anymore.
No, that's not the issue. The issue, it seems to me, is that this woman is going to have a disproportionate influence because I agree, the whole royal family of Great Britain, they're just for the tourists, really. They don't have any role, okay? And I know for a fact that a lot of people in the UK think that the royal family are all a bunch of déclassé twerps. They don't like them, okay? Which is really kind of bizarre, okay? That upper class people in the UK sort of like are starting to look down on the royal family, but well, and this only accelerates that, okay? Because he is marrying somebody awful, okay, objectively awful. The fact that her own family are just these trashy people who are trying to make money off of this thing, and she's not even inviting them to the wedding. I mean, I don't know about you, Benway, but I have a lot of difficult relatives, okay. But I'm not going to disinvite them to my own wedding, okay? Because even my difficult relatives, I know that they're gonna, they'll behave if only momentarily, okay? The fact that she's not even inviting her own father to her own wedding, good God! I mean, it's just
Well, it proves that she's petty and it clearly doesn't come from a healthy home life. I'm not
yeah.
surprised. But the thing is, sure she's trash, but I'll be honest, so was Diana. Diana had the superficiality of a nice girl. She acted like a fucking trashy movie star. It is
No, she
baked
acted like it, but no, before
it's
that,
baked into the DNA of this family.
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that beforehand, she was respectable. She was like a nice little virgin from a good family. That's what she was. That's all she needed to be. She was a nice little virgin from a good family that they were known. They were like sort of like poor royals, but they were up there. Okay, they were untitled aristocrats, and
No, they were titled. The Spencer family was titled.
oh, they were okay. Well, fine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, see,
But the thing is, so and then she had a little dance with John Travolta, and her knees buckled, her pussy got wet, and suddenly she was Hollywood. She was the lovely moniker, the people's princess, because that's the attitude we have now. The idea of a people's princess is anathema. This
so,
whole.
so you're a monarchist. You're like a hardcore. You want to go back to the good old days of like real monarchies where they chopped off heads, I guess.
Yes, democracy is a joke, and there are certain degrees where a highly engineered and structured society would be, encapsulated in the monarchy would be much more preferable than the conglomeration like a congealed blob who thinks that when we get our minds together, we behave wonderfully. That doesn't happen. I'd rather have a monarch compared to that.
Okay.
Certainly, this family has proven itself useless, though.
Yes, they have. They have completely useless. Oh, by the way, the tab for this whole shindig, the big royal wedding is something like $85 million, and apparently 50 million pounds. That apparently is the scuttlebutt, and they're going to be splitting the bill. The British state and the British royal family are going to go 50-50. Now, I personally, I'm just, how can I put it? There is a clear sense that the royal family is happy about this woman because of the color of her skin, which it seems to me fucking racist as fuck, laughable.
Well, it's hard to tell what the Queen herself and especially Prince Philip think about this. I doubt that Prince Philip. You know how Prince Philip is. Yeah. I highly doubt that this girl is, in his eyes, anything more exciting than a weekend fuck.
Yeah,
but he'll deal with it. In fact, you may have saw a few months ago, there was a moment of tabloid gossip because Michael of Kent, the cousin of the family, his wife, who is a Central European German Czech aristocrat, wore a Blackmore brooch to the meeting with Meghan Markle or something. Blackmore brooch, for those of you who don't know, it's an old antiquated thing, which is basically you have like a blackface caricature on it. It was, for a long time, it was not considered taboo or anything. But part of me kind of really, and this princess, Michael's wife, I forget her name, apologized for it. She says she's going to retire from public life. But part of me really hopes and really wishes it was that old school aristocrat that says, you see this brooch? This is you. It's nothing but a decoration we're putting on for the sake of having to look interesting. But you are never going to be a member of the family. I really hope that's what she was doing.
Oh,
but there
no
was
question.
There was a big scuttlebutt about it. Meghan felt offended because that's her job, and that draws. And you is it racist in the sense that hey, look at my happy little to use the words that they might have used in the old day. Look at my happy little pickaninny running around in the family.
Exactly.
Isn't that lovely?
Oh, by the way,
of course,
it is Princess Michael. That's her actual name, and she did wear. It's a little gold brooch, right? Of like a little figure from like the chest up. I'm looking at it now. A little figure of the chest up that is clearly black, and he's dressed all in gold except for his very black face. And he's smiling. He's a little smiling little, I don't know, servant boy, and that's the brooch. And I can't believe that she wore that. I mean, obviously she was sending a signal.
Part of me really, I hope she was sending a message. And that kind of sort of socially constructed slight is what I love about the aristocracy in their best form. That kind of symbolic gesture of, this is what I think of you. Attitude just makes me feel warm inside. But of course that's anathema to everything, and so she sacrificed herself on that altar. But that's kind of the attitude. And funny thing is, there are people in Britain who I know, friends of friends and family and whatnot, a lot of them don't really trust or like Meghan Markle. I know if you go to the surveys, people will say nice things, but in private, I know a lot of families says, she's kind of inappropriate. For the royal family, because the English still, even though there's a lot of republicanism and socialist attitudes that hates the monarchy, a lot of the sort of small town Englishers who still have some semblance of England as a respectable country think this is a mistake, but they're going to put up with it because that's what England does now.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Right now, what the statistic is, something like 15% of the British population was born outside of Britain. Okay, and the amount of it's I've been actually looking for the statistics. It's actually hard to figure out how many people in the UK today are not ethnically British. Ethnically British being, of course, ethnically English, Welsh, Scottish, or Irish.
Right.
It's really hard because it's clear that they're trying to obfuscate the number. I lived in London for a while. Okay, London is not England, but I'll tell you right now, walking around the place, you know, it's like, in Kensington, the place is, overrun by Arabs. They own it. And, I went to a movie house, a theater, in a big shopping mall. And there was a guy there with his 3 wives, right out on the open. He didn't care. And it was obvious that the 3 women there in their full veils, the niqab, which is the one that you only see their eyes, they were clearly his 3 women because the niqabs were identical. Okay. And very expensive. And the guy was obviously a rich guy, and he had a bunch of children running around, and it was clearly the family outing to see some movie. And he brought his 3 wives, and he just didn't care, It's being overrun by the Arabs, okay? And so maybe this is like a first step in that direction. I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
It's funny because yes, but the only thing countervailing the increasing Muslim population are the Polish and Indian population, who are also sizable immigrant elements. But the funny thing is, I know in particular the Hindi Indians tend to be more Tory in their attitudes. They tend to have fondness of the British Empire to a certain extent. Those that live in Britain, have fonder memories of what Britain meant for India, and they hate with a passion the Muslims. So do the Poles, for historical reasons as well. But any kind of country that had to live next to a Muslim nation or be invaded by one tends to remember.
Yeah,
it's just one of those things. It's one of those things. And ironically enough, if anybody's going to have a backbone against this in Britain, ironically enough, it's the other foreigners, not the British. The British feel like their attitude is, how much further can I bend over to satisfy you? Yeah, I even saw today like an ad somewhere like, join the British police force, or whatever the local police force is. It's going to be cool if you have your attitude for it. And they show a woman in a big burqa suit, with her, but with like the police checkered demarcations on her hijab and everything. I think this is a fucking joke. It's just basically getting ready for a parallel society. It's like, hey, there's Muslim police, there's the British police, whose only job is to make sure that the Muslim police are not molested. It's kind of sad. Well, not kind of. It is sad.
It's completely
in a way. But
sad.
the whole and the whole attitude of the royal family, and what to do with the royal family, is to say, oh, how wonderful! We can show how modern we are. We can show how contemporary the monarchy is, which is the complete opposite of what a monarchy is a manifestation of, which is an unbroken, or mostly unbroken, link to the past.
Yeah.
The current queen can trace her lineage back to Albert the Great, the first known, big, king of England.
Well, I don't
that
know
is
about
part
that,
of the that is part of why you have the monarchy there.
Well, okay, look, the sense of national unity and blah blah. Look, bottom line, these people are a fucking tourist attraction, right? They are becoming a fucking joke. In their own country, the upper classes sort of like look down on them and find them just trashy. Okay, and now they're getting ready to welcome this trollop because she's trash. And how on earth can a young guy like him? He can get any fucking woman he wants. And by the way, from my point of view, it proves that no matter how much exterior, badges of validation you might have looks, position, money, everything going for you, charm, and all the rest of it, you can still be a cuck. Because this guy is a fucking cuck.
That's the point. He's the kind of guy who wants someone to tell him what to do, because that has a tendency of happening for guys who, in theory, have it all. Yeah. There is a certain tendency in some of them to say, I just would love it for someone to boss me around.
Yeah.
It's not surprising that, a lot of the guys who get into the BDSM fucking fetish and being as submissive are guys who are actually fairly high up in corporate worlds or some successful levels of the jobs, because they want to be in a position of relinquishing some sort of authority. And hey, if a fucking, divorcee who's, social justician is going to tell him you're a son of a bitch for when you were a little kid dressing up as that little Nazi.
Yeah, costume, I thought that was funny as fuck. I mean,
yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I remember when he got so much shit over that, but they've conveniently forgotten that because he's a popular kid.
Right.
but by
And
that
what's
token,
also interesting about
he
him is like
dated
because
good women. I mean, like nice women. There's some South African chick he was dating that she was just just right on kind of girl, right? But no,
and
he
wasn't if
what?
didn't if memory served, wasn't he actually in armed combat in Iraq? He actually was on the front lines.
Yeah,
This
in
was a common
Afghanistan.
tendency.
In
Yeah, there was a
Afghanistan.
common Afghanistan, which could have been even worse. There's a tendency also in that family to use their spares in that way. We would have skin in the game. So it's odd because this guy should in theory have exposure to the harsh realities of the world, but I guess his response to it is like, I want a little bit of light entertainment, light fare now going forward. I don't know.
I don't get it. Like, see, this woman, Markle, okay, fine for a mistress. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, because one thing is the social aspect of your position, and the other is just your private enjoyment, right? And sometimes you have to do things, because in order to maintain your social position that you might not really feel like doing, but you realize it's advantageous. Okay, for a guy like him, he marries the quote unquote right girl, and he's got some side action. It's perfectly fine. There's no problem with it, just so long as you're fucking discreet about it. But no, you don't marry your fucking side action. You don't, because you look like a fool. Because this guy is looking like a fucking fool. And the thing is, see, on a practical level, this woman is 36 years old. She's never going to have a kid. I mean, she's probably had a couple of abortions by now, right? So you think that that womb of hers is going to be able to support any kind of child? No, it's as inhospitable as the fucking moon. I just don't get it. I honestly do not get it. He could have gotten anybody. He could have gotten some nice. Shit, if he really wanted to go ethnic, he could have gotten some nice little brown-skinned chick from the right family, from the right schooling, who would have been a fucking virgin, and would have been somebody, respectable, okay, and brown-skinned. But no.
That's the conclusion you kind of have to reach, that he probably loves her. Because sometimes if it makes no sense, that's the only conclusion. Sorry to be so uncompelling in my argument, but that's
absurd.
What it is.
Look, my thinking is, and actually, shit, because I've had problems with my mic, and so my whole schedule of posts has been shot. But because getting a lavalier mic in Ukraine has been exceedingly difficult. Anyway, the thing I'm trying to say here is that one of the things that I'm arguing in the videos that I'm doing now is that men's comparative advantage over not just women, but all of other animals on the face of this earth, is the ability to set aside their emotions for the sake of rational action, okay? And, setting aside your feelings of love is a necessary component of that. Because you can, of course, fall in love with somebody. You can fall in love with them deeply, but realize that they're wrong for you. You realize.
But here's the thing with this family, though. This family has a history of following its heart. Go back one generation. Princess Margaret did it a number of times. Go back. You could even go to Charles. Charles maintained his relationship with Camilla despite everything. Go back even further. Edward VIII. He gave up the fucking throne for it. This family has not had a good success record on this front.
No, they don't have a good success record in controlling their fucking emotions, okay? Of understanding.
And of all the countries for that to be the problem, it's Britain. Stiff upper lip. Keep your head about you and your wits about you, and all else about is doubting theirs or what have you. To use the Kipling poem. It's like they can't. They fail at being English.
Yeah, they fail. Yeah, in Latin America we don't have this fucking problem because we acknowledge the difference between what makes a good marriage and love. Because what makes a good marriage is not love, okay? It's other qualities, but not love. Love, in fact, is to use a word I'd hate to use, it's actually toxic for a good marriage. Because good marriage is about having children and being part of a society and being a brick in that society. That's what a good marriage is all about. A good marriage is about supporting one another in your ambitions because they're the same ambitions that you both have. Love, good sex, that's different. If you find it in your marriage, great, good on you. But it is not your priority insofar as, who is going to be a good spouse for you. Okay, let's face this. How many times, you probably know this, how many guys who fell in love, quote unquote. No, they fell in love with some girl who was a spendthrift, who was a party girl, who was just a fucking mess. Okay? And of course, he fell in love with her. And you knew how the relationship was going to play out. Okay? You knew that it was going to be a fucking nightmare. Okay? And of course it was. They got married, and she cheated on him, and he's just tearing his hair out, and he didn't focus on work, and his work went down the tubes, and blah, blah, blah. And she went this way and that way, and he followed like a little fucking puppy and disregarded everything else in his life. And at the end, his life is fucking a mess, right? Because of this trollop that he married, right? That is like you're following your dick instead of your head, right?
Well, but here's the thing, and this is the problem that this family has. It's a problem, actually, I think a lot of families are having now, if they're any public notoriety, which is they are choosing to conform to a desired narrative, whether they like it or not, right? It's a beautiful couple because it looks wonderful. It looks like a TV ad. You say like Kodak serves all of the people of the world, and hey, look at this great healthy family. And it's, obviously it's the wonderful beige family of all races coming together to produce a non-cultured offspring who will do basically the bidding of all businesses, which is buy our shit. Yeah. So basically the royal family is jumping headfirst into that kind of story, and it's what's not odd about it. What's awful about it is that nobody really is asking questions like, do they get along? Do they have, to your point, the same goals and ambitions? Do they care about the same attitudes, whatever your definitions of a healthy relationship are. I would say everybody's focused on, don't they look great together? Isn't it a great thing that the royal family isn't afraid to not go for the English and go for someone more exotic? Isn't it great that, hey, there's a connection to Hollywood now, and everybody can be a little princess if they want to be? That is, and it's not unrelated to the other things you wanted to talk about, which was reality, or the concerns about the core details of what's going on doesn't really matter to anybody. So I'm not shocked that they're ignoring the obvious, disgusting attitudes that are probably going to happen in that relationship. It's not a shock to me that people will take, like Trump's comments out of context, because it doesn't matter. We're all in a game of theater right now.
Yeah, well, yeah. The thing about Trump really bothers me, okay? Because I heard that whole exchange, okay? Some sheriff there, asked something about the gangsters from Mexico, the MS-13, I think they're called, whatever the fuck, okay?
Yeah.
And he said that they're animals, okay? Well, fucking A, he's going to say they're animals because they are. I mean, these fucking crazies, like, they chop off people's heads and do all kinds of crazy ass shit, right? I mean, they're fucking murderers, right? They're drug dealers. What are we going to say? Oh, they're misunderstood. They actually, deep down, they have feelings that are very tender and delicate. No, they're fucking animals, and you shoot them all. Let God sort them out. I don't have a problem with that.
I want to do the trollish Neil deGrasse Tyson thing and say to all of the materialists out there who tend to be left wing, it's like, well, technically you're all materialists, so you're all just human animals. Isn't that just the beauty of life? It's a circle of life. We're all in the food chain. We're animals. What Trump just referred to you in the context which you prefer to refer to yourself, unless you don't. Just throw the shit back at them, because at the end of the day, yes, was it clear to me they threw it out of context? Yes. Did it surprise me that they threw it? Fucking no. We got it from day one from this guy. Even remember when he started his campaign, we talked about the tendency of the immigrant population coming through, people who are bringing drugs, this, that, and the other. Some of them are good people. His attitude was saying, hey, we're not getting the best people here, but everybody turned it around to say Trump hates Mexicans, which is a stretch from what he said there, a very clear stretch.
Yeah.
And it continued on through the campaign. Remember, the whole Access Hollywood tape, which is, they let you do it and they turned that into Trump raped women, which, even for the biggest idiot on the planet, you have to realize you have to take a creative liberty with what was said there. It's no surprise to me at all.
Yeah.
And I know the path that it's taking, right? Because it's you get a chance for the talking heads, like either George Takei or the late night talk show hosts, to say, he doesn't think you're really good people, but I think you're more than animals. I think you're people, except white people. You're assholes, and you're little, you're trolls, or you're this, that, or the other. So it's a fucking game. And the only positive attitude I have is that eventually people are going to say, in an obvious way, yeah, hey, they're it's your daily reminder that they are in fact out for Trump, and it's more than just being out for Trump, it's being out for you, because that looseness of the tongue, or that your willingness to say things very obviously, is what they don't like. So maybe it'll energize you enough to realize, hey, you actually probably should get out the vote and make sure that these other assholes don't win. Will it necessarily work that way? I don't know, but there's a help. Christopher Hitchens always said, when he read the New York Times, he always went to the box that says, all the news that's fit to print, as his daily invigoration of hatred, because, only someone so arrogant, he says only a publication so arrogant and, unself-aware would post something like that. It was the necessary jolt of energy to get him active in the morning. I feel like this is that attitude for any kind of right-wingers. Like the latest jab at Trump for saying something they didn't like reminds me, oh yeah, they are a bunch of assholes. I can ignore them or hate them and continue to be energized about it. So maybe it's a good thing.
I don't like Trump. Okay, I've said this vociferously many times. I think he's a fucking used car salesman. I don't like the son of a bitch. But this is grossly unfair. It's just wrong. How all of them are just twisting what he said around in a way that is just fucking. Oh man, it just. Okay, it's kind of pathetic that I'm still shocked by this kind of shit. Okay, it's kind of pathetic that I'm a grown fucking man and I still am enraged by this to the point where I'm inarticulate. Okay, but I think it is grossly unfair, and I don't like the guy. I don't want to be in a position where I have to defend the son of a bitch. But that's what the mainstream press is forcing me to do. Because as a reasonable guy, as a guy who tries to be fair in everything that he does. Okay, I find it grossly unfair that they're doing it, so I wind up having to defend the guy. He didn't say this shit.
Well, here's my take on it, and I get your inarticulate rage, as you might say. Here's the thing why I try not to do it, because on some level it feels like you're accepting the terms of the left-wing game by attacking on this. Paul Joseph Watson, I think, is the worst perpetrator of this attitude.
What's up with everybody hating him so much? I mean, I want to get to that, but make your point. But I'm interested in it very much. But I want to know why everybody hates on Paul Joseph Watson all of a sudden.
Well, the point I'm going to make is going to give you a foray into that.
Okay.
Because his attitude, the way he's responding to it, it's like Trump didn't really say that. He was referring specifically to these people. What Paul Joseph Watson implicitly saying is, I agree with your premise that calling any normal person or any this, that, or the other as an animal is something horrific and wrong. And I'm going to defend Trump against that because I don't want you thinking that Trump said something horrific and wrong. My response would be, don't accept the game that, they get to define what's horrific and wrong and you get to respond to it. Fucking no. Don't engage on that level. Call the hypocrisy out on them if you want, but really change the game on them, force them to go on the defensive. Because right now, all we're doing is being reactionary again. Yeah. And that's the thing with Paul Joseph Watson, why people are frustrated with him, because he will still do the, them alt-right racists don't mean anything and the blah, 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 blah. He feels like he still needs to, in his mental strategy, like he'll get more people on his side if he distances himself from what he would consider the unsavory elements of the right and have this a little bit more moderated stance. And all he's really doing at the end of the day is accepting a lot of first principles of his enemy, which puts him in a harder position to deal with. And people who would be friendly on him from the right get frustrated with that and say, fuck you. You want to play their game. You're going to get burned by their own rules. And that's where the frustration with him comes from.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Now, insofar as this thing of the Trump situation with the fucking trivial comment, and how...
the trivial comment was the best way to say it, because I thought to myself, this is a throwaway line. I don't even have a visceral reaction to it one way or the other, and then everybody made it a big fucking deal.
Yeah,
it's just a line like I said, my parents and my grandparents and even myself to a certain extent have that kind of Central and Eastern European attitude. We just say whatever the fuck goes in your head. It doesn't really matter if it's approved or not. There was no polite conversation at the dinner tables
Yeah.
in this regard, because everybody just said whatever the fuck they wanted. That's how I just go about this.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like it's not even water under the bridge. It's like it didn't even pass through my antennae of things like, oh, should I have a thought on that? No, it's just how people talk.
Yeah, but the thing that he actually said, right, which is something that just everybody eminently reasonable would agree with, because these fuckers
of
are
course.
animals, because they're fucking gangsters. They are fucking gangsters who are known to chop off people's heads, to kill men, women, and children. They don't care. They're fucking animals, and they're human traffickers, and they're all kinds of nasty.
Well, have you physically seen them? Like, they're tattooed all over the point. They look like geeks at a sideshow who are going to just start like ripping the heads off chickens and eating them.
Yeah.
The part of the gimmick is that you're an animal on some regard.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So it was a throwaway line. It was apropos. It was not. It was not any kind of epiphany insofar as his true feelings about anything, other than the fact that he thought that these gangsters are fucking scum. And the press just flipped it around. Don't they realize that they keep on doing this shit? Things that are so transparently obvious that are not true, that they are alienating more and more of their potential customer base, that they are hurting their own business by doing this. Don't they realize this? Because people aren't that fucking stupid. They're stupid, but not that fucking stupid. And people are realizing, for the most part, that this is all bullshit. Okay, because all you have to do is play the fucking clip. It's like the goddamn thing with Trump and the Prime Minister of fucking Japan with the fucking fish food, right? The fucking fish food, right? They had this thing and they cropped out the other guy, so it would just be like Trump was being an asshole of just tossing the food, and he was just tossing fucking fish food, and they were trying to nail him over that.
He was following the lead of his host, of course. But here's the thing,
this is the
Jesus. Yeah, but here's the thing, and your point, why you say, no one's that stupid. It's because there are two different kinds of stupid, and you're thinking of one kind. There's the normal stupid, which is, you literally can't process thoughts, and thus you make obvious mistakes. This isn't that kind of stupid. This is higher intelligence kind of stupid. People love to shit on Dennis Prager, but he had a good line. He says, there are certain idiocies I would equate to higher education, which is you had to go to college to say something so stupid.
Yeah.
I think this is that kind of attitude, because what we're really saying is there's an ideological construct of how the world is operating and what the meaning of everything is, to the point where they actually will make egregiously ridiculous claims because they have a conception of the story that they're going to tell. And even if not all the facts are in place, it's almost like the mind, the human brain has demonstrably will cut out information that's interfering with the main thing you're focused on, just so you can be focused on it. Yeah. I think it's like that at an ideological level. They know that there are other details that complicate things, but they're convinced of the main story. They're going to go with that attitude. Whether, the obvious statement that, yes, Trump was talking about, MS-13, they can then backpedal and say, well, he left it ambiguous. And of course, this is a guy who can dog whistle. So he really is saying it about all this. It's like, give me a fucking break. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it is that stupid. So yes, people can be that stupid, but it's a special kind of stupid.
Yeah. I love this dog whistling shit, Hey, do you want an ice cream? That's dog whistle to Nazis. What the fuck? It's like, it's fucking insane that everything is a dog whistle nowadays. And because before, dog whistling was really fucking obvious, okay? I mean, you listen to George McGovern, quote unquote, dog whistling. He practically used the word nigger in his sentences, right? But here, what's going on? We have somebody saying something completely innocuous, and or on its face something reasonable, a reasonable argument about something specific, i.e. immigration. And everybody says that it's dog whistling to Nazis. Jesus.
Well, here's the joke about that to me is that is the left-wing equivalent of the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory they love to throw against the right.
Yeah.
What was what is the stereotypical or the cliched view of that? Kind of.
I get your sense, but look, I think that the more they do it, the press, the more the left do it. Okay, it hurts our whole polis. Okay, our whole political environment hurts it in ways that cannot be repaired, and they don't seem to realize it. They don't seem to realize that their attitude is creating a hatred for them, a hatred that is going to express itself in some kind of violence eventually. Is my thinking. And
I think they do realize it and don't care.
That's what they want, or they don't care.
Well, some want and some don't care. I think what is probably happening on a lot of levels, because I'm seeing it tied into the various mechanisms of social interaction, social media, what have you, that their perception is we have enough control over the levers of power that all we need to do is really isolate out the unmentionable people of society, those who don't fit into the cathedral nicely, and we can use the latest variations we're building into the tools to isolate them, to keep them from talking to each other, to keep them from having a public voice, to the point where we have recontrolled everything that could have potentially been used against us. I honestly think all of the things you're seeing on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube now is a manifestation of that desire to never let 2016 happen again. And so they're doing it by taking all the little nuggets of, SJW-isms that we've noticed for a very long time. Let them be the flaggers. Let them be the people who
trusted flaggers,
advise the trusted flaggers. Let those be the people who advise on the algorithms of shadow banning and insta blocking and all of that, whatever the variations on the theme are. And as a result, you will have the recontrol of almost like they're the new commanding heights of the economy in a weird way, or the commanding heights of the Areopagus, right? The area where everybody would come to talk. As a result of that, they don't really care if you've been isolated, or I'm sorry, if you feel alienated, because they've effectively isolated you out from being anything that is a risk to them.
Okay, that's what you're thinking. I have a different conception that is not antagonistic to what you're saying, but is a slight, sort of like parks its car next to you, okay? And it's this. I think that what's going on, what we are experiencing, it's a psychodrama not just over Hillary Clinton's loss. I think on the left, they're having a psychodrama over the fact that they realize, though they never want to admit it, they realize that the Obama administration was fucking despicable. They realize at a fundamental level that everything Obama did was corporatist and frankly evil. Okay, I mean the drone warfare. Jesus, I mean, I. By the way, we have to do an assessment of Obama. We have to do an episode where we assess like his entire administration from top to bottom. Because right now I don't have my notes on that because I have been making notes on the Obama administration. But bottom line, my thinking is that a lot of the things that we're seeing now insofar as the left, their tantrum behavior towards Trump, it's not just Trump. I think it's a psychodrama whereby they are trying to purge out all the emotions, all the anger that they felt towards Obama, but which they couldn't express because it was not the thing to do, because Obama was their guy. He might have been their guy, but the policies that he implemented were fucking awful. They were awful, they were immoral, and they were despicable. The guy was a son of a bitch who did evil fucking things in this really nice packaging, this really nice golden package of the Obama. But he, Obamacare.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. The only reason I would have some skepticism about the bad consciousness argument is this, which is particularly amongst the corporatist attitude, because yes, Obama was a corporatist. The thing is, left wing have made peace with corporatism for a long time. At the very least, since Clinton.
I disagree.
I think no, they've made their peace. Let me put it this: why are they so comfortable speaking nice about Google and Amazon and all these other companies whenever they say, we're going to take a bite out of, fake news and all these other things? Why are they, leaving aside, the corporatist angle? Why are they getting so friendly with the FBI and everything? Because they have long realized that they are okay with the uses of power as long as it's within some superficial level of, we're moving to a world where I feel comfortable and nice. And the world being comfortable and nice is fine with corporatism. Half these people who consider themselves left-wing work for these companies.
Yeah.
In a comfortable
actually,
way.
you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, because they figured out a way to control and capture corporatism. And
Yes.
And I guess the hard left, realizing that capturing the state didn't really help, they pivoted and captured corporations.
Yeah. And even that, if you're really believing in socialism, even that won't help. But you'll think to yourself, well, I can. it'll be capitalism with a human face, and I get to run it. So isn't
but
that nice?
the thing is, see, socialism, hard socialism, communism, or socialism as practiced in putatively communist states. It was never about the fucking economy. It was about fucking control. That's the thing that people don't realize. I mean, like I've mentioned previously, my own experiences of the socialism in Chile during the Allende regime, and it was about control. They didn't really care about the economy. That wasn't the issue. It was about controlling people. That's what they wanted. And I think that we on the right have to start changing our ideas about what constitutes control. Because for a long time, we always thought it was state control. We didn't want any fucking commies. We didn't want a communist state. But we haven't realized that the large corporations are acting in communistic ways, if you will, in the sense of controlling people, what they say, what they think, what they do. And that ultimately is what they want. They want control of people. And so we have to decentralize. We have to go out of our way to break up these foci of control.
Well, here that's the thing, and this is why I have a strong break with those who consider themselves "quote unquote" liberalists. The idea that you can say, well, part of the problem is state control itself. We should allow just free companies, associations to do their own thing. Blah 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 is just capitulating control to a third party, who is stronger than you, who has more money than you. The attitude we really need to say, take into account is we actually do. The only way you get out of it to a certain extent is if you exercise control yourself, and you can exercise control in a way that is fair and balanced, if you will, but it keeps control in your hands. We can't just keep the old libertarian arguments, which aren't even really fully libertarian. As I said, they're just concessions to companies, assuming that because companies are in private interests, they'll do what's best because of vague notions of competition.
Yeah, bullshit.
Which is a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. These companies don't want competition, and they make sure that they don't happen. These companies aren't afraid to take control of the government institutions. Why should you be?
Yeah, exactly. Goddamn right. Yeah. How could I put this? It's actually hard to make the mental jump from the fact that communists are now in private industry and in our corporatists. It's hard to make that mental leap.
The best example of it, right? The guy who started BuzzFeed was literally a socialist student in grad school who's realized that you could make money off of group associated nostalgia, because BuzzFeed started as 10 things to remember, only people born in 1986 would remember kind of shit. That's how it started.
Right.
And it evolved from there.
Right. Was Gavin McGinnis a socialist back in the day?
I don't know if he was or not, but he certainly associated.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he associated. Anybody who was with Vice at the beginning certainly had their flings. He certainly seems like a guy who had flings. I hate to kick a guy when he's down, but he already went down on his knees a long time ago. I certainly am not adding to that.
What are you referring to specifically? I haven't kept up.
Oh, there's the running rumor that Gavin is, shall we say, has his proclivities.
What kind of proclivities? Life. What, he's homosexual? What?
Let's just say I don't want to get be libelous.
Spit it out. Just spit it out.
I don't want to be libelous, but anyway. But Gavin likes to play on multiple teams.
That he's bisexual or something like that. Okay, well, I would not be surprised if he were. I have no idea if he is or not. I don't care. But what I will say is that this idea. To tell you the truth, in this conversation, I'm really intrigued by that notion that I had just never really thought about it in these terms of people who had been socialist, communist, and that desire for control over others, because that ultimately is what it's all about, controlling other people's actions, that it had slid from the government to corporations.
It's on multiple fronts too. One of the earliest examples of it was academia. It was literally called during the 70s, when a lot of these Marxists went into academia, the Long March Through Academia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It explicitly referencing, Mao's long march through, whatever it was.
Yeah, through the countryside, through Manchuria or whatever.
The countryside. Yeah, and so they do it that way. Remember, we're talking about especially if you want to lay this again to the boomers, think back on the Big Chill, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole generation made their peace with the various institutions that they, in theory, were rebelling against in a vague kind of way.
Right.
Some became businessmen, some were arguably, in the military, some were actors. So the media, they all make their little peace with it.
Mm-hmm.
They all made their peace with corporatism. They all made their peace with making a lot of money and getting comfortable. But they, and so the way they rationalize it is, now that we're in have the levers of power, we're gonna express our youthful enthusiasm by, admonishing people who don't think like we do. That moral preening is all that's left of the radicalism, which wasn't that radical to begin with.
Well, now it's becoming very radical, it seems to me. I mean, you have people that are outright saying that free speech is a bad thing. It's incomprehensible to me.
Funny coming from, like I said, that, to the degree to which the left-wing boomers played a part in that, because the left-wing campus movement started with guys like Mario Savio, who were really big on free speech. In fact, the organization FIRE, who is the free speech advocate now, a lot of them started out as left-wing guys who became moderate because they realized through the 70s and 80s and into the 90s that what they thought was an advocacy for free speech was really only advocacy for left-wing speech. And as soon as they were in power, they got rid of the right. So FIRE was one of those moderate, it was a collection of those moderate liberals who said, well, no, we're going to treat it objectively. And so now they find themselves supporting conservatives in a lot of ways. So, more often than left-wings for sure. So that's a manifestation in microcosm of the macro point, which was everybody who had that attitude made their peace. They're in charge now, and they're figuring out ways to basically break down the society, because there is still that, let's be clear, there's still that element in that generation and its seeds, its offspring, which fundamentally hates the society they were born with. And whether they are intending to reproduce it, reconstruct that society in a new image, or just tear it down, doesn't matter. They're only really effective at tearing it down, and they're working on ways to do it. That same attitude of, which in the 70s, remember when the pro-abortion movement would be like, they would compare the fetus to like a cancerous tumor that can be removed whenever it is. That,
oh man. Here's the thing.
They softened it now, but
why
that's
is
still
it
there.
that this generation came up with this shit? Why is it now? Why not before? Do you think it's because finally this is the true end of the death of God, that people no longer believing in God in any real sense? I mean, you go to any church, it's empty all the time. Is this the ultimate end of it? Do you think that this is why it happens?
Well, it's interesting because there is not the generation that preceded them, but the generation before that, the lost generation. Arguably, you would think, that's a disillusioned generation if there was ever one. And like I would have thought, because they got into socialism as well. They got into very experimental, deconstructive efforts in the arts. Why didn't they really take it to that level? It's like, well, because they were more broken than they were antagonistic. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
There's something about that generation which had no adversity to worry about, which meant that they weren't disillusioned with anything. They were just pissed off for whatever reason. Like they didn't have their jouissance moment, their moment, like really bursting their cherry with a big event. They didn't have a big defining war event. They didn't have some sort of big social event. They had to construct it. And so they're
what about
now
Vietnam?
figuring out things. Most of them didn't even participate.
I don't know. I would think that that's the generation that came after the boomers. Not even the Gen Xers, but the generation that's coming up now, the millennials. They are because Gen Xers, my generation. First of all, it was one of the smallest generations in U.S. history compared to the rest of the population, because it was a birth contraction. It was basically people born between 68 and what was it, like 80, and it was
let's say 80 usually,
and that was one of the smallest generations ever, and compared to the rest of the population, that is, as percentage-wise. And after that, there was a mini baby boom, and that was the millennials.
Because those are the baby boomers' kids in many instances.
Yeah, exactly. Because my generation, Gen X, we're basically the children of the silent generation. Okay, In my own particular case, my parents are actually baby boomers, but they're not really baby boomers because they weren't American and they didn't grow up in the United States, and so it's a completely different dynamic going on. So I'm not going to get into that, but you're right. The millennials are the children of the Gen Xers, and they're drunk on the mentality of the Gen Xers, but it's like even worse, you know.
Oh no,
The
I
moral
think
premium.
in my case, I could be the exception. I think a lot of us, well, the earlier half are baby boomer children.
Right?
The latter half are Generation X children. So the latter half may be a little different, but I think at least my group has a lot of the fucked upness of the baby boomers in terms of their own bug. It wasn't in my case because my parents weren't really manifesting the core baby boomer culture, but a lot of those hangups that you would see in I keep going back to it. A lot of those hangups you see in the Big Chill, those were the parents of my friends in a way, and all of that kind of shit got fed into the kids. So if my generation is fucked up, it's largely because look at our parents and look what we have to kind of deal with. And it's you've got two options: you can rebel or you can embrace your parents. If they're embracing the parents, they embrace we're all kind of special people. We each get a fucking trophy because we each did something interesting, which is fake. Or if you rebel against them, you just fucking hate everything and go from there. It's neither's very good, to be brutally honest with you, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, something else I wanted to touch on, and this is the final thing that I want to do in this episode, is about you heard about the Manhattan attorney who got into hot water over a viral video of him saying that everybody should speak English. He was sick and tired of people speaking in Spanish in some restaurant. You heard that?
I didn't even hear that. In fact, that surprises me because that feels so 1999 kind of thing.
Well, yeah. Well, okay. So this actually in my neck of the woods or in my information feed or whatever, it's like all over the fucking place. But then again, I follow Sean King, aka Talcum X. The white guy who's pretending to be black and who's like all social justice warrior-y and shit like that, right?
Right.
And anyway, and the guy who got into like a car accident and claimed that he like racists beat him up and shit like that. He's really fucking funny. Anyway, Milo did a whole expose on him. It was really, he's trans white. Okay. Anyway, or no, I mean trans black.
Right.
My mistake. Anyway, okay, this is the story. This guy, who was later identified as a guy called Aaron Schlossberg, he was in some restaurant in Manhattan, in some, sort of like one of those upscale fast food restaurants, right? And he threw a hissy fit at some workers there who were speaking to each other in Spanish. Presumably speaking about him, I suspect. That he seems to be like a big asshole. I mean, just
Right.
like, because the viral video shows him, he didn't do anything. He just threw a hissy fit, okay? And he said that he was sick and tired of these people speaking in Spanish because, this is America and people should speak in English, and he pays his taxes, and a lot of his taxes are probably going to welfare to pay for these fucking people, so why don't they speak English, blah, blah, blah. He threw a hissy fit, and, people recorded him, and he walked out. He didn't do anything. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't insult anybody specifically. He was just pissed off, right? And, well, people went trolling through their archives, and they found several videos of this guy throwing hissy fits over various reasons, okay? Like for instance, there was one where apparently he bumped into some people on the street and called them foreigners, even though he was clearly Americans. It was just weird. He's just a weird guy. He's just an asshole, okay?
Right.
He's a typical Manhattan attorney, i.e., he is a grade A asshole, because that's what they are, right? It's not complicated. I don't care, I know enough lawyers and enough people to know that they're all dickheads. Anyway.
Well, it's also New York too. It's like it's treating fellow New Yorkers like dirt is every New Yorker's God-given right.
Exactly. Okay, so this guy, everybody just starts looking for the guy to find out who he is off of this video, this racist video, which I don't actually think is racist, but whatever. Okay. Because I actually think that, when you're working in a particular country, you should be speaking the language. You should not be speaking Spanish. I speak Spanish, okay? But, I'm Hispanic, but I think it's wrong, okay? If you know the language, if you're working in that country, Okay, right now I'm living in a foreign country, and I feel, frankly, out of place that I don't speak Russian as I ought to, even though I'm not actually like working here with people and what have you. But look, it doesn't matter. The point is, he was just a dickhead. That's it. And there is this absolute lynch mob going after the guy. Okay, I mean, like a crowd of people were like waiting for him. Reporters and shit were waiting for him outside his apartment. Okay, the guy's under siege for being a dickhead. Okay,
Right.
I think that that's fucking wrong. I think that that's just fucking awful. Okay, being an asshole should not be made illegal, or it should not be the reason that you lose your livelihood. Okay. I mean, it's a good enough reason to lose your friends, perhaps, or your family if you're an asshole. But that's it, I mean,
Right.
Your life should not be destroyed because you're a dickhead, even if he is a racist dickhead. Okay.
Well, this is not unsimilar to, last 4th of July when Trump retweeted the guy who had the meme of, Trump playing rope-a-dope or punching out
Oh yeah,
CNN,
the hand asshole solo. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they were trying to, the Crackerjack team at CNN said, we found out who the guy is, and we won't reveal his name if
so
he
long as a
apologizes.
good boy, so long as he's a good boy, he's safe. But
exactly,
he steps out of line, and we reserve the right to fuck him over. Jesus Christ, that was fucking awful.
Well, it's the same phenomenon, which is social engineering. Right, it's not about you did a crime or an assault, which we have laws for. It's you're not thinking the right way. You're not participating with the rest of the band. You're acting in cacophony with us to our song. So we're gonna extract you from the situation completely. We're gonna overdo it. And the thing that's interesting about this is just how easy everybody thinks that you can kick it up to like the ultimate scale. The thing about left-wingers in particular, even though I also see it sometimes with right-wingers, is that their only response is to go up to 11 on these kind of things.
Yeah.
So everything is the Holocaust.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, they would say that, they'd fling that accusation at this guy, but this guy happens to be Jewish. And he was at some march when he was basically saying, I'm more Jewish than you, which it was a flashback to a memory.
My God, like to say I'm more Jewish than you is there anything more Jewish?
I don't
other
know.
than being it's like the only way you can say, there's two types of Jews: those who are really Jewish and those who are self-loathing Jews, I guess. And then like he picked the one team, to go, because like that's a Larry David character if ever there was one. Not Larry himself, but a character that would have been depicted by Larry David.
No, like I'll tell you. I remember my freshman fall in college. I went to Dartmouth and I went to the Latino meeting, right? With this other Latino girl that I'd met. But she wasn't even like Latino. She was like Japanese descent from Argentina. And she was, very upscale, if you will. And so we both went because we were kind of curious, but we weren't really interested in going to it, but we wanted to just out of curiosity, kind of like, okay, so we went, right? And we walk in the door and there's this, these two women, screaming at one another, and one is saying, I'm more Puerto Rican than you because I eat beans, and I've seen you not eating beans. And I was like, fuck this. And I walked out. This was in fucking 1991, okay? I can't imagine how it is now in colleges. It must be far worse. But, I mean, back in the day, I thought it was fucking insane. That notion, I'm more ethnic group than you.
Right.
It's well, what's it about? It's about privilege. I have more privilege than you because I'm more ethnic than that, and you're like a betrayal of your ethnicity, and therefore, you're bad, I'm good because I'm more of this thing. Look, this guy is an asshole. There cannot be a society where being an asshole is outlawed. You can't have that. It's apart from
the thing is, every single person on this planet is an asshole to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you are. I don't care how moral you are. No one's Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He's busy right now.
Yeah.
So everybody, a lot of people think they're Jesus Christ. That is the problem.
Yeah.
But the thing is, every single person is going to bother someone at a gut level. So, there's a certain degree, and I will admit, like, I don't honestly see alt-righters, the ethno-state alt-righters really doing this to their credit. Like, I don't say like I haven't seen too many instances of I'm more white than you because I have Wonder Bread and mayonnaise. You know what I mean? To thank God we're not at that point. So if we keep, you just have to accept it. There's a certain degree of saying like my response to an asshole is to just ignore them for the rest of my life. It's very easy for me to do that. Trust me. But we don't want to ignore anybody anymore because because here's the thing that I've noticed, I think fundamental to left wingers and why I hate a lot of the things that they do on the social side of like say, the trans rights or this, that, and the other. It's not because I fundamentally believe like a trans person doesn't have any right to exist or any kind of thing like that. It's this. There was a sense not too long ago that there was a private life that was allowed to exist. It was separate. By adopting now the whole there's come out and be gay, come out and be trans, whatever your various identity is, what they're fundamentally saying is there is no private life. It's all public, and we're going to socially engineer what's the most permissible version of that. We're tolerant, but. So I think that's a fundamental criminal moral act to do that because you're absolutely getting rid of the private life completely. So you cannot just be an asshole and forgotten anymore. No, there is no private life for an asshole.
Yeah.
The asshole is non-existent to a certain point.
Or he's behind very closed doors to very specific people that he knows won't expose him. Yeah.
Right.
Or to very underhanded behavior. See? I think that this is a mistake. I'm looking at the video as we're speaking. I'm looking at the video of this poor schmuck, right? And he walks out of his apartment with a big umbrella. It's black with one red stripe on it, right? And the thing is, he's trying to use the umbrella to block the photographers and sort of pass inconspicuously. And he's such a fool, okay? Because when you have a media scrum around you, what you have to do is just walk placidly and just pretend like you're just out for a morning stroll. Because what else are you going to do? Anything else, you look fucking guilty. You look fucking like under siege. You look like guilty, the bottom line.
Right.
And no, you have to just walk out I'm just having a morning stroll. I don't know why you guys are all around here, but I'm just going on my way. And please excuse me and just be placid and just because that I'm looking at the guy now in the video. It's on loop, right? He just looks so pathetic, and the reporters are all trying to take pictures of his face, and they're lifting up his thing, and they're invading his space. It's even worse than if he'd just gone on, and he looks guilty, Oh man, there was another.
Well, yeah, because you're going through the motions of a movie we've already seen. So we've already seen guys wheeled off for murder or what have you.
Yeah, it's a perp walk.
Hands.
It's the perp walk.
Yeah, exactly. So don't do it because nothing you did constitutes it, but if you follow the motions, it's like if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, even though it's not a duck in theory.
Yeah,
that's what that is.
But here's the other issue that really bothers me, and the reason I latched onto this story is because basically it's not about this guy who's an asshole. It's about all these other people who are virtue bullying him. They are virtue bullying him. They are trying to show that they are good. And it's beyond virtue signaling. It is virtue bullying him. And from being virtue bullying, it's going to be a very short step before we have virtue lynching. They're going to be lynching these people. And I don't mean in a virtual sense. I mean in a literal sense. I mean that they're going to decide, look, we have all this video evidence that he's a racist, so let's go and kill the fucker. It's going to happen. And it's going to happen soon.
It's sort of already happened, like in the days after the election in Chicago. Yeah. There was an incident of a guy who was wearing his Trump hat, literally getting pulled out of his car in a black area and being beaten.
Yeah.
Literally pummeled because of that. That was that's virtue lynching right there.
Yeah.
Another variation on it was that, like I said, even though he wasn't a political supporter of the right wing because he was fucking autistic, that another kid in Chicago was pulled out by a young black kids and abused, tortured, and beaten on Facebook Live of all fucking places.
Yeah. But I think that was just, I don't think that was triggered by any kind of political affiliation. I think it was just mean fuckers. But sure. The other day it happened in the Olive Garden that a bunch of people bullied some guy, a black guy, because he had a MAGA hat on. And there was a big kerfuffle, and eventually the guy had to leave, because all the employees were bullying him, ganging up on him. I mean, the fucking people from the fucking kitchen showed up there to heckle the guy while he's sitting there with the fucking MAGA hat.
Can I just say, objectively speaking, the people who have the least position to argue about any kind of standards of judgment are people who produce the food at Olive Garden. Let me just say that on a fucking record, man.
Yeah.
Have you had those? Have you
No,
had those?
no, because
fat salad? No,
exactly, because I have
shit.
self-respect. Yes, I have self-respect. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I'm being facetious, of course, but
Only mildly.
It's gonna happen.
Only mildly.
I'm only mildly facetious. Well, I have a suburban mother, okay, and suburban mothers like one thing or two things: the Cheesecake Factory and the Olive Garden. So I have to fucking go there every so often.
Oh man, you gotta educate your mother. Tell her no, my lovely mother, no, that's not the place to go. Yeah. But anyway, look, we've gone on a little bit over an hour on this podcast, and this is a topical podcast, so it's going to go up today that we're recording it. It's going to go up today, and the Meryl Streep episode is going to get bumped to later in the schedule. But anyway, it's been a pleasure, Dr. Benway. Why don't you take us out?
I've got nothing fun to say anymore. You depressed me. All I'm thinking about is Olive Garden now and how I don't want to eat it ever again.
Yeah, with that vision of the Olive Garden, just imagine that every restaurant on the face of the earth is an Olive Garden.
It is, though. Every chain restaurant is.
Okay, with that, this is Coach Red Pill signing off for Dr. Benway. This has been the Coach and Benway podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.